Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the entrance of the Grand Conquered Chamber and took a deep breath. The massive doors before her were made of crystal, mined from a dying star. They were beautiful and cold, just like everything else in this place. Behind those doors sat the 12 most powerful beings in the galaxy. They had summoned her here today to deliver what they called a final resolution. 3 years. Elena had spent 3 years walking through these doors, 3 years of smiling at creatures who looked at humans like they were insects, 3 years of begging for basic rights that every other species took for granted, 3 years of broken promises and quiet humiliations. Today would be different. Today, one way or another, it would end. The door slid open and Elena walked into the chamber. The room was a perfect circle with 12 elevated platforms arranged around a central floor. Each platform held a representative of the galaxy's great powers. They looked down at her from their heights, and Elena felt the familiar weight of their contempt. High Counselor Vexar of the Volante hegemony sat at the highest platform. His species looked like tall, elegant insects with silver skin and 4 arms. They had ruled this part of the galaxy for 10,000 years, and they never let anyone forget it. Ambassador Vasquez, Vexarn said, his voice carrying perfectly through the chamber, we thank you for attending. The Council has reached a decision regarding humanity's petition. Elena clasped her hands behind her back. Her heart was pounding, but her face showed nothing. I am eager to hear the Council's wisdom. Vex gestured to a holographic display that appeared in the center of the room. After careful consideration, we have prepared a most generous offer for your species. The display showed a star map. Elena recognized it immediately. The Sol system sat at the edge marked in blue. A single red dot appeared nearby. We will grant humanity the Kessler system, Vexarn announced. Complete solar system for your exclusive use. Elena studied the display. The Kessler system was a dead zone. 1 burned out star, 3 barren rocks in an asteroid field. No life, no resources, nothing. Additionally, Vexarn continued, humanity will be granted provisional trade access to 17 approved systems. You will pay standard tribute fees for use of established trade lanes. This tribute is set at 40% of all transport goods. Lena did the math in her head. It would make trade almost impossible. Finally, Vexarn said, and something in his voice made Elena tense, humanity will surrender all military vessels above frigate class to the Council for inspection and potential decommissioning. This is for the safety of all species. Of course, young civilizations cannot be trusted with such dangerous weapons. The chamber fell silent. The 12 counselors watched Elena with expressions ranging from boredom to amusement. They had already decided this was fair. They had already decided humanity would accept. Elena thought about the past 3 years. She thought about the first time she came here full of hope. Humanity had just discovered faster than light travel. They had reached out to the galaxy with open hands, eager to join a community of civilizations. The galaxy had not reached back. She remembered the first rejection. The Council had said humanity needed to prove itself worthy. So humans proved themselves. They sent aid to disaster zones. They shared technology freely. They volunteered for missions no other species would take. The council said it was not enough. She remembered the second rejection. The council demanded that humanity demonstrate peaceful intentions, so humans reduced their military. They opened their borders to inspection. They signed every treaty put in front of them. The council said it was not enough. She remembered the third rejection and the fourth and the fifth. Each time the requirements changed, each time the goalpost moved, each time humanity did what was asked, and each time it was not enough because it was never going to be enough. Elena understood that now. The council did not want humanity to prove itself. Council wanted humanity to kneel. They wanted humans to accept their place as a lesser species, grateful for whatever scraps they were given. Elena looked up at the 12 counselors. She looked at their elevated platforms in their contemptuous eyes. She looked at the offer they called generous. I request a brief recess, Elena said. I must consult with my government. Vexarn's mandibles clicked in what passed for a smile among his kind. Of course, we understand that such momentous decisions require time. We will reconvene in 1 hour. Elena bowed and left the chamber. The crystal doors closed behind her. In the small office assigned to Earth's delegation, Elena activated a secure communication link. The face of Secretary General Marcus Webb appeared on the screen. He was an old man with tired eyes, but those eyes were sharp. I watched the whole thing, Webb said. They're not even pretending anymore. No. Elena agreed. They're not. Webb was quiet for a moment. You know what this means? If we accept these terms, we'll be a servant species. If we reject them, we'll have no allies, no trade partners. Nothing. They'll strangle us slowly. I know the council is betting that we're too afraid to walk away. They think we need them more than they need us. Webb leaned forward. Are they right? Elena thought about her daughter, who was 12 years old and wanted to be an astronaut. She thought about the colony ships being built in orbit filled with families looking for new homes. She thought about all the humans who had died over the past 3 years working in dangerous places because the council denied them access to medical technology that could have saved them. No, clears throat. Elena said, they're not right. Webb nodded slowly. Then you know what to do. Operation Quiet Night is authorized. As soon as you give the word. Elena closed her eyes. This was the moment. There would be no going back. I'll give the word soon, she said. Very soon. 1 hour later, Elena walked back into the Grand Concordia chamber. The 12 counselors looked down at her with the same smug confidence. They expected her to negotiate. They expected her to beg for slightly better terms. They expected her to do what every young species had done for thousands of years. Elena stopped in the center of the chamber. She did not look up at the counselors. She looked straight ahead. The United Earth Federation has considered the council's offer, she said. Her voice was calm and clear. We have reached a decision. Vexar leaned forward slightly. And what is humanity's response? Elena finally looked up. She met Vex's eyes and held them. The United Earth Federation withdraws its petition for trade access, she said. We withdraw our petition for territorial recognition. We withdraw from these negotiations entirely. A ripple of confusion passed through the chamber. This was not in the script. Furthermore, Elena continued, we withdraw our observers from council space. We withdraw our volunteers from Your relief missions, we withdraw our ships from your trade routes, we withdraw our engineers from your station. Vexarn's mandibles clicked. Rapidly, Ambassador, you cannot be serious without council support. Humanity will survive, Elelina cut him off. It was deeply rude to interrupt a high counselor. She did not care. We survived ice ages. We survived plagues. We survived wars that killed millions. We survived our own planet trying to kill us for 200,000 years. We will survive this. She turned to address the entire chamber. For 3 years we asked for nothing but fairness. We did everything you demanded. We proved ourselves 100 times over, and still you offered us chains disguised as charity. Elelina straightened her spine. Humanity declines. The chamber erupted in noise. Counselors shouted at each other and at her. Some laughed. The Valenthi delegation buzzed with angry, clicking sounds. Elelina ignored them all. She walked toward the crystal doors. You will regret this, Vexarn called after her. Without the council, you are nothing. You will come crawling back within a solar cycle. Elelina stopped at the doors. She turned back one final time. We wish you well, High Counselor, she said. We truly do. Perhaps someday, when you have learned what fairness means, we will speak again, but until then, humanity walks its own path. She stepped through the doors. They closed behind her. On her personal communicator, a message from Secretary General Webb was waiting. The word. Elelina typed a single sentence. Operation Quiet Night is now in effect across the galaxy. The message spread at faster than light speeds in orbital stations around alien worlds. Human engineers received the signal and began packing their tools on colony worlds ravaged by disease. Human doctors made final rounds before boarding transports on freighters hauling cargo through dangerous space. Human captains changed course toward home. One by one, the lights of human civilization began going dark. The galaxy did not notice at first. After all, what did one young species matter? Let them sulk in their single system. They would learn their place soon. Enough. The galaxy was wrong. In the Grand Concordat chamber, the laughter continued. The counselors congratulated each other on calling humanity's bluff. They were certain the humans would return, humbled and desperate. None of them noticed the small message that arrived from the Synthesis Collective, the ancient civilization that had watched the galaxy in silence for 1,000 years. None of them thought it was important. The message said only, you will regret this. They would. They just did not know it yet. 3 months after humanity walked away, the galaxy began to understand its mistake. Guildmaster Torvak of the Merchant Guild sat in his office on Station Prime, staring at numbers that made no sense. His species, the Kororath, had managed galactic trade for 6,000 years. They had survived wars and plagues and economic collapses. They had never seen anything like this. Explain it to me again, he said to his assistant. The young Korath pulled up a holographic display. It started small. Master, the fringe colonies reported delays in medical supplies. Then the agricultural stations in Sector 7 ran low on replacement parts. Now he paused. Now 17 major trade routes are operating at less than half capacity. Torvex rubbed his face with his 3-fingered hands. And this is because of the humans. Yes, Master. We did not realize how many human freighters were operating in Council space, they were cheap, they were reliable, they would fly routes that other captains refused because of pirates or radiation storms. The assistant's voice grew quiet. They are all gone now. Torvax remembered the human traders, rough, loud creatures who laughed too easily and bargained too hard. But they always delivered on time. They never broke a contract, and they would haul anything anywhere if the price was fair. Can we replace them? Torvax asked. We are trying, master, but other species demand higher fees for dangerous routes. The Valenthilic licensed carriers refuse to work outside core systems. The independent captains. The assistant paused again. Many clear's throat of them are raising prices. They know we have no choice. Torvax looked at the numbers again. Supply chains that had worked perfectly for centuries were falling apart, all because humanity decided to go home. The council assured us this would not happen, he said. Yes, master, they were wrong. Far across the galaxy, Admiral Sethri of the Valenthi Third Fleet had a different problem. He stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the wreckage of what had been a thriving colony world. The Void Raiders had come 3 days ago. They had killed 40,000 people before the fleet arrived. By then it was too late. How did they get this deep into our territory? Seth demanded. Our early warning system should have detected them days before they reached this world. His tactical officer shifted uncomfortably. Admiral, the early warning system in this sector was incomplete. Incomplete. We have had sensors here for 2,000 years. Yes, Admiral, but the sensors were supplemented by human observer ships. They volunteered to patrol the empty spaces between our stations. We never asked them to do this. They simply did it. The officer paused. They stopped 3 months ago. Seth felt cold despite the warmth of the bridge. Are you telling me that humans were protecting our borders without orders, without payment? Yes, Admiral, we found records in the local database. Over the past decade, human observers detected and reported 417 potential raider movements. 230 of those reports led to successful interceptions. The officer's voice was barely a whisper. We would have lost dozens of colonies without them. Seth thought about the council's decision. He had supported it at the time. Humanity was too aggressive, too unpredictable. They needed to be controlled. Now he stood in orbit of a dead world and wondered who the real aggressors were. On the other side of the galaxy, the Corvani collective faced a different kind of crisis. The Corvani were peaceful creatures. They resembled tall, thin birds with brilliant blue feathers and gentle eyes. They were renowned throughout the galaxy for their medical knowledge. Their hospitals accepted patients from every species. Dr. Alina stood in the plague ward of the largest hospital on Corin Prime. 300 patients filled beds that had once been tended by a mixed staff. Now only Corvani doctors remained. How many died last night? She asked her colleague. 17, came the reply. We lost 3 children. Elena closed her eyes. Before the humans left, they lost perhaps 2 patients per week in this ward. The humans were not better doctors than the Corvani, but they were immune to this particular plague. They could work in the contaminated zones without protective suits. They could hold the hands of dying patients without risking their own lives. They had done this for free. They had volunteered to work in a plague ward on A world that was not their own, caring for species that were not their own. When Alina asked them why, they had simply said, because you needed help. Now they were gone and patients were dying because the remaining staff could not move fast enough in their protective suits. The council said we could request replacement workers. Her colleague said, I did request them. They sent a message saying they would consider it in 6 months. Alina's feathers ruffled with anger. 6 months? My patients will be dead in 6 weeks. Could we ask the humans to come back? Alina had already tried. She had sent a personal message to the human medical volunteers she had worked with for years. The response had been polite and said, we are sorry, we have been ordered home. Our government says we cannot help those who refuse to treat us as equals. We hope you understand. She understood. That was the worst part. In the lawless fringe territories where council law meant nothing and only the strong survived, a different kind of change was happening. Captain Vorax of the raider ship Crimson Blade gathered his crew in the cargo hold. They were a mixed bunch, exiles and criminals from a dozen species united by greed and a willingness to take what they wanted. The humans are gone, Vorax announced. His crew cheered. No more armed escorts. No more trap ships, no more humans hunting us down and destroying our bases. For years the fringe had been dangerous but manageable. The humans had made it that way. They ran convoy escorts for free. They tracked raiders to their hidden bases. They fought with a fury that terrified even hardened pirates. Vorax still remembered the day 3 human ships had destroyed his brother's entire fleet. 12 raider vessels against 3 human frigates. Humans had lost 1 ship. The raiders had lost everything. Now those humans were gone. This is our time, Vorax said. The fat colonies of the core worlds are undefended. The trade ships are unescorted. We can take what we want when we want. His crew cheered again. But Vorax noticed that some of the older members looked uneasy. They remembered what the humans could do. They remembered what it felt like to be hunted. What if they come back? One of them asked. Vorax laughed. Why would they? The council insulted them. The galaxy rejected them. They have no reason to protect anyone but themselves. Now he spread his arms wide. The humans gave the galaxy a gift and the galaxy threw it away. Now the gift is ours to take. The raider ships launched that night, dozens of them spreading across the fringe like a plague. Within weeks, they would reach the border of council space. Within months, they would be attacking colonies that had not seen violence in generations. In the great chambers of the council, the news reports piled up. Trade disruptions, border attacks, medical crises. Every day brought new problems, and every problem traced back to the same cause. The humans were gone, and the galaxy was falling apart. Counselor Vithal of the Salari Communion requested an emergency session. He was old for his species, with silver scales and tired eyes. He had voted against the harsh terms imposed on humanity. He had warned the council that they were making a terrible mistake. No one had listened. We must reconsider our position, Bethel told the assembled counselors. The evidence is clear. Humanity's departure is causing damage we cannot easily repair. High Counselor Vexar clicked his mandibles dismissively. The humans are throwing a tantrum. They will return when they realize they cannot survive without us. With respect, High Counselor, I believe The opposite is true, humanity is surviving quite well. It is we who cannot survive without them. The chamber erupted in angry protests. Vexarn raised a hand for silence. You speak of one young species as though they were essential to galactic civilization. This is absurd. Humanity has existed in space for barely a century. We have ruled these stars for millennia. Yes, F. Thrall agreed, we have ruled, but when did we last serve? When did we last help those who needed help without demanding payment? When did we last do something simply because it was right? Silence filled the chamber. It was an uncomfortable silence. Before anyone could respond, a communication alert chimed. Every screen in the chamber lit up with the same message. It came from the Synthesis Collective, the ancient AI civilization that observed but never interfered in galactic affairs. Message was brief. You have made an error. Corrected. The counselors stared at the screens. The Synthesis Collective had not spoken to the council in 800 years. For them to break their silence now meant something significant. What does this mean? Vexarn demanded. No one had an answer, but across the galaxy, on a blue world circling an ordinary yellow star, humanity knew exactly what it meant. They had not planned for the collective to speak. They had not asked for anyone's support. They had simply walked away, and in doing so they had revealed a truth the galaxy had forgotten. Power means nothing if you cannot use it wisely. The council had ruled for thousands of years, but they had ruled through control and fear and the suppression of young species. Humanity offered something different. They offered help without asking for submission. They offered strength without demanding worship. And now the galaxy was learning what it felt like to lose that gift. The panic was just beginning. 6 months after humanity walked away, the galaxy finally understood what it had lost. Admiral Seth sat in his private quarters, reading a report that made his blood run cold. For weeks, his intelligence officers had been investigating the sudden boldness of the Void Raiders. What they found changed everything he thought he knew about the past decade. The report detailed a secret war. For 10 years, human ships had been hunting Void Raiders throughout the fringe territories. They had destroyed hidden bases. They had rescued thousands of slaves. They had killed or captured some of the most dangerous pirates in the galaxy, and they had never told anyone. Seth read about Operation Silent Guardian, where 50 human volunteers spent 3 years mapping every raider hideout. In the fringe, he read about Operation Broken Chain, where human marines infiltrated a slave market and freed 800 prisoners from 12 different species. He read about the human captain who flew her damaged ship into a raider command station, destroying it and saving Athi. Colony World, her crew had evacuated. She had stayed behind to make sure the job was done. Her name was Sarah Chen. She was 34 years old. She had a husband and 2 children waiting for her on Earth. Sethrix had never heard her name before. Neither had anyone else on the council. The humans had fought and died for a galaxy that did not even know they existed. Why? He whispered to himself. Why would they do this? His aide, a young Valenthi officer, answered quietly. Because they believed it was right. Admiral, the human reports we recovered say the same thing over and over. We help because someone should. Seth closed the report. He thought about the council chamber where he and his fellow Counselors had looked down at humanity and seen only a young primitive species that needed to be controlled. They had not seen the truth. The truth was that humanity had been protecting them for years, asking nothing in return. On the medical station orbiting Corin Prime, Dr. Alina received a visitor. He was human, the first she had seen since the withdrawal. He wore civilian clothes and carried a small medical bag. Dr. Alina, he said, extending his hand in the human greeting. My name is James. I used to work in your plague ward. Alina remembered him, a quiet man with kind eyes who worked double shifts without complaint. James, I did not think any humans were allowed to return. We're not officially. I'm here as a private citizen, not a representative of Earth. He smiled sadly. I heard things were bad. I couldn't stay away. Alina led him through the hospital. The plague ward was worse than ever. Patients lay in beds without enough staff to care for them. Corvani doctors worked themselves to exhaustion, but it was not enough. James put on protective equipment and walked into the ward. Within minutes he was checking on patients, adjusting treatments, holding the hands of those who were scared. You cannot do this alone, Melina said. One person cannot save everyone. No, James agreed, but I can save some, and right now some is better than none. He worked for 14 hours straight. When Alina finally forced him to rest, 17 patients had been stabilized who might have died. It was a small number compared to the hundreds in the ward, but for those 17 it was everything. Why did you come back? Alina asked. Your government ordered you home. Your people have every right to hate us. James was quiet for a long moment. I don't hate you, doctor. None of us do. We're disappointed. Yes, we're hurt, but hate, he shook his head. Hate is too heavy to carry. And besides, these patients didn't vote against us. They just got sick. They deserve help, regardless of what their government does. Alina did not understand. Her species had lived in peace for millennia. They had never faced the kind of rejection humanity had faced. She could not imagine offering kindness to those who had treated her so poorly. Your species is very strange, she said. James laughed. We get that a lot across the galaxy. Similar stories played out. Humans appeared in places they were not supposed to be doing work they were not supposed to do. Volunteers who claimed to be acting on their own, helping clear's throat. Those who had refused to help them. The Galactic news networks took notice. They ran stories about the mysterious human volunteers who appeared after disasters, who worked in dangerous conditions other species avoided, who asked for nothing in return. The contrast with the council's behavior was sharp and uncomfortable. On Earth, humanity was not suffering. The opposite was true. Secretary General Webb stood on a platform overlooking the new Shanghai shipyard. Below him, dozens of massive vessels were under construction. These were not warships. They were colony transports, research vessels, and cargo haulers. The projections are ahead of schedule. His aide reported. We'll have full trade capacity within the year. The new alliances with the Torelli Confederation and the Wren Collective are providing everything we need. Webb nodded. The Toli and the Wren were small species, barely tolerated by the Council. They had welcomed humanity with open arms. In 6 months, Earth had built stronger trade relationships with them than the Council had offered in 3 years, and the Military web asked, all withdrawn. Ships are being refitted, the new fleet will be twice the size of what we had before and better equipped, the aide paused, the crews are eager, sir, very eager. Webb understood. Humanity had spent years being treated as inferior, being told they were too primitive, too aggressive, too dangerous. Now they were building something that would prove the council wrong, not through conquest, not through war, through success. Keep building, Webb said, and keep helping. The volunteers in council space are doing more damage to the council's reputation than any fleet ever could. Ambassador Elena Vasquez spent most of her days coordinating the volunteer efforts. It was illegal, technically. Earth had officially cut all ties with council space, but the government looked the other way when private citizens decided to travel abroad and happened to help people in need. One evening she received an encrypted message from Councillor V. Hill. He requested a secret meeting on a neutral station at the edge of council space. Elena did not have to go. She had every reason to refuse, but curiosity won out, and 3 days later, she sat across from the old salary counselor in a small private room. Thank you for coming, Bethel said. His silver scales had dulled with stress. He looked older than he had 6 months ago. I know I have no right to ask anything of you. You don't, Elena agreed, but I'm listening. Bethel pulled out a data tablet. The council is falling apart. The trade disruptions have caused economic damage we cannot repair. The Void Raiders grow bolder. Every day, 3 colony worlds have fallen in the past month alone. Medical crises are spreading faster than we can respond. He paused. We need help. We need you. Elena took the tablet. She looked at the numbers, the casualty reports, the desperate pleas from colony worlds. Part of her felt satisfaction. The council had earned this suffering. But another part of her, the part that still remembered why she had become a diplomat in the first place, felt only sadness. You still don't understand, do you? She said quietly. Bethel looked confused. I don't understand what? Elena put down the tablet and pulled out her own device. She activated a holographic display that filled the room with names, thousands of names. These are the humans who died in council space over the past 10 years, she said. Doctors who caught alien diseases because the council refused to share medical technology. Engineers who died in reactor accidents because safety equipment was classified as military grade and denied to our species. Volunteers who were killed by raiders while protecting worlds that called us primitive. She scrolled through the list. It seemed to go on forever. This woman, Sarah Chen, flew her ship into a raider station to save Athi colony. No one even thanked her. This man, Marcus Kim, spent 3 years in a Corvani plague ward and died from a disease that had a cure. The council refused to share it because humans hadn't paid enough tribute. Elena turned off the display. We didn't leave because we were weak, counselor. We left because we finally realized we didn't need your approval. We were already worthy. We always had been. You just refused to see it. Bethel was silent for a long moment. Then why do your volunteers still help us? Why risk themselves for people who treated them so poorly? Elena smiled, but there was no joy in it. Because that's who we are. We don't help people because they deserve it. We help because we can, because someone should, because it's right. The council tried to teach us that the galaxy only respects Strength, but we already knew something. The council forgot true strength is choosing to help even when no one forces. You too, she stood to leave. Ambassador. Please, Bethel said, I'm begging you. Come back to the table, negotiate with us. I swear things will be different. Elena paused at the door. I'll consider it, but understand something, counselor. We're not coming back because we need you. We're doing fine on our own, better than fine, actually. She turned to face him one last time. If we come back, it will be on our terms, and our terms aren't about trade deals or territorial rights. Our terms are about justice for every human who died serving a galaxy that spit on them, for every young species that's been crushed under the council's boot, for everyone who was told they weren't worthy. She left the room, leaving Counselor Vithal alone with the weight of everything his people had done. Clear's throat. 3 days later, the Void Raiders announced the formation of their coalition, dozens of raider clans united under a single banner. Their first target, the wealthy core worlds of Council space. The galaxy had been warned. The galaxy had been given a chance. Now the real crisis was about to begin. 9 months after humanity walked away, the Void Raider coalition attacked. The Battle of Serentine Gate was the largest military engagement in 3 centuries. The combined fleets of the Galactic Council gathered at the ancient defensive station, confident that their superior numbers and technology would crush the raider scum. They were wrong. Admiral Sethri watched from his flagship as the battle turned into a disaster. The Council fleets were designed for intimidation, not combat. Their ships were beautiful and powerful, but their crews had not faced a real enemy in generations. The raiders had been fighting their whole lives. Valenthi flagship went down in the first hour, rammed by 3 raider vessels that did not care about their own survival. The Kororath dreadnought exploded when raiders boarded it and overloaded its reactor. One by one, the great ships of the Council fell. By the time Seth's ordered a retreat, a third of the fleet was destroyed. Another third was too damaged to fight. The Serentine Gate, guardian of the core worlds for 10,000 years, fell into raider hands. The path to the heart of the galaxy was open. Refugees flooded the remaining Council worlds, millions of people from dozens of species, all fleeing the raider advance. The Council had no plan for this. They had never needed one. For millennia, the only threats to their power came from each other, and those threats were handled through politics, not war. Now real war had come, and they had forgotten how to fight it. The refugee ships moved toward the only safe place left, human space. Secretary General Webb received the first refugee request on a Tuesday morning. By Thursday, there were thousands. By the following week, millions of desperate people were begging for permission to enter Earth's territory. Webb called an emergency session of the United Earth Parliament. The debate was fierce. These are the same species that called us primitive, argued one representative. The same governments that denied us basic rights. Why should we help them now? Because they're dying. Another representative replied, children are dying. It doesn't matter what their governments did. The people in those ships are innocent. The debate continued for hours. In the end, the vote was close, but the decision was clear. Earth would accept refugees. They would provide food, shelter, and protection to anyone who needed it. News spread across the galaxy within hours. Humanity, the species that had been rejected and humiliated, was opening its arms to those who had rejected them. The refugee camps on the border worlds of human space grew quickly. Earth sent supplies, doctors, and peacekeepers. They asked for nothing in return. Among the refugees was a young Valanthi named Kyrex. He was 15 years old and he had watched his parents die when the raiders attacked his colony. A human rescue ship had pulled him from the wreckage. Now he sat in a refugee camp surrounded by humans who spoke strange languages and ate strange food. He expected to be treated poorly. His people had always said humans were violent and dangerous. Instead, a human woman brought him a blanket and a warm meal. She sat with him while he ate, even though she could not understand his language. "Why are you helping me?" Kyrex managed to ask in broken common. "We, my people, we were not kind to you." The woman smiled. "You're a kid. You didn't do anything wrong, and even if you had, you'd still deserve food and a blanket." Kyrex did not understand. In Valanthi culture, kindness was a transaction. You helped those who could help you back. Helping someone who had nothing to offer was foolish, but the humans did not seem foolish. They seemed strong, a different kind of strong than what Kyrex had been taught to respect. While the refugee crisis grew, something strange was happening in the space lanes between Council territory and the fringe. Human ships appeared, not official military vessels, not Earth government transports, but private ships crewed by volunteers, armed freighters, converted passenger liners, anything that could fly and fight. They called themselves the Volunteer Fleet. Captain Diana Torres commanded the converted cargo hauler Defiance. Her crew was a mix of former military and civilians who could not stand watching the galaxy burn. They flew into raider territory, escorted refugee convoys, and fought when they had to. Officially, Earth denied any connection to the volunteer fleet. Unofficially, the government made sure the volunteers had ammunition, fuel, and medical supplies. Torres stood on the bridge of her ship as they approached a refugee convoy under raider attack. 3 raider vessels circled the transport ships like wolves around sheep. "They haven't seen us yet," her tactical officer reported. "We could slip away. Let the council handle this." Torres shook her head. "The council isn't here. We are all hands battle stations." The Defiance was outgunned. But Torres knew something the raiders didn't. Humans fought differently. They took risks that other species considered insane. They refused to retreat when any sane being would run. The battle was short and brutal. The Defiance took heavy damage, but 2 raider ships were destroyed and the 3rd fled. The refugee convoy reached safety. When the convoy survivors learned they had been saved by humans, many of them wept. They had been told their whole lives that humanity was the enemy. Now humans were dying to protect them. The story spread. Human volunteers fighting in the fringe, human doctors working in plague zones, human ships standing between raiders and helpless refugees. The council tried to spin the narrative. They claimed the volunteers were actually government forces, that Earth was violating the withdrawal agreement. But no one believed them anymore. The contrast between council words and human actions was too stark. In the refugee camps, something unexpected began happening. Young people from a dozen Species started asking how they could help. They wanted to join the humans. They wanted to fight the raiders. They wanted to do something useful instead of just waiting to be saved. The first mixed species volunteer unit formed on a refugee station orbiting a dead world. Humans, Valenthi, Corvani, and a dozen other species trained together, fought together, bled together. The council called them traitors. The volunteers called themselves the Free Fleet. On Valenthi Prime, the home world of the species that had once ruled the galaxy, a revolution was brewing. The common people watched the news feeds showing human volunteers dying to protect strangers. They watched their own government hide behind walls while colonies burned. Councillor Vithal led the movement against the hardliners. He gathered evidence of corruption, incompetence, and outright betrayal by the old leadership. He built alliances with reform-minded representatives from every species on the council. When the vote finally came, it was not close. High Councillor Vexar and his supporters were removed from power. A new council took their place, led by Vithil himself. The first act of the new council was to send a message to Earth, not a demand, not an order, a plea. Please, the message said, we were wrong. We are sorry. Help us. Ambassador Elena Vasquez received the message in her office on Earth. She read it 3 times before responding. We will send a representative, she wrote back, not to negotiate, to listen. 2 weeks later, Elena walked into the Grand Concordia chamber for the first time since she had walked out 9 months ago. The room looked the same, but everything else had changed. The elevated platforms had been lowered. The councillors no longer looked down on visitors. Vithal sat in the center wearing simple robes instead of the ceremonial armor of the old regime. Ambassador Vasquez, he said, thank you for coming. Elena took her place in the center of the room. She was aware that billions of beings were watching this moment through broadcast feeds. The whole galaxy waited to see what would happen next. New Councillor Vithal, she said, you asked for this meeting. You said you wanted to apologize. I'm here to listen. Vithal stood. He walked down from his platform until he stood on the same level as Elena. Then he did something no high councillor had ever done in the history of the Galactic Council. He bowed on behalf of the council and on behalf of every species that treated humanity with contempt. I apologize. And he said, we were arrogant, we were cruel, we were blind to the truth that stood before us. Humanity asked for fairness and we offered chains. You deserved better. You deserved what you offered us: respect, kindness, and justice. Elena listened in silence. She had dreamed of this moment. She had imagined the council crawling, begging, desperate. Now that it was happening, she felt no joy, only sadness for all the time and lives that had been wasted. Words are easy, she said. The council has spoken many words over the years. Most of them were lies. Bethel nodded. You are right. Words are not enough. That is why we have prepared more than words. He gestured, and holographic displays filled the chamber. Documents, treaties, proposals. Elena recognized some of them, the same agreements that humanity had begged for years ago. Everything you asked for, Bethel said. Territory, trade, access, full recognition, but also more reparations for every human who died serving the galaxy. Without recognition, seats on every major governing body, and accountability. He pointed to a list of names: former counselors, military leaders, corporate executives, the people who had engineered humanity's humiliation. These individuals will face justice, Bethrel said. Public trials, full transparency. The galaxy will see what was done in their name. Elena studied the displays. It was more than she had expected, more than she had dared hoped for, but it was not enough. Not yet. You've made a good start, she said, but there's something missing. Bethel looked puzzled. What more could we offer? Elena turned to address the entire chamber and through it the galaxy. This isn't just about humanity, she said. It never was. We're not the only species the Council has mistreated. There are dozens of young civilizations out there who were crushed, controlled, denied their potential. Your offer gives us seats at the table, but what about them? She pulled up her own display. Species names, many of them unknown to most viewers: the Toli, the Wren, the Salathi, the Blackstone people. Young species, forgotten species, species that the Council had decided were not worth acknowledging. We don't want to replace you as rulers of the galaxy, Helena said. We want to end the system that makes ruling possible. Everyone gets a voice, everyone gets a chance, not because they've earned it by your standards, but because they exist and they deserve it. The chamber was silent. What Elena was proposing would fundamentally change galactic civilization. It would mean the end of Council supremacy. It would mean sharing power with species that had been powerless for centuries. Vithal looked at his fellow counselors. Some looked afraid, some looked angry, but most looked tired, tired of fighting, tired of pretending that the old system still worked. You ask for much, Bethel said. I ask for justice, Elena replied. True justice, not the kind that only benefits the powerful. That's our price for coming back to the table. Take it or leave it. She turned to walk away just as she had 9 months ago. Wait, Vithal called. You have given us much to consider. We need time to discuss. Elena paused at the door. You have 1 hour. After that I'm going back to Earth, and this time I won't answer your messages. She walked out. Behind her, the Council began to argue, but Elena already knew how the vote would go. The galaxy had seen too much. Old lies no longer worked. Change was coming, whether the Council wanted it or not. The only question was whether the Council would lead that change or be swept away by it. 1 year after humanity walked away, the galaxy began again. The vote in the Grand Concorded chamber took longer than an hour. It took 3 days. Representatives argued, pleaded, threatened, and wept. Old alliances shattered, new ones formed. The future of galactic civilization hung in the balance. In the end, the vote was not close. The Reform Council accepted every one of humanity's terms: full recognition for all young species, seats on governing bodies based on population, not power, transparent trials for those who had abused their positions, and most importantly, an end to the system that allowed a few species to control the fate of all others. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood in the center of the chamber as the results were announced. She did not smile. There was too much work ahead for celebration. The United Earth Federation accepts the Council's offer, she said. We will rejoin galactic civilization, not as servants, not as masters, but as equals. Among equals, the chamber erupted in applause. Some counselors looked relieved, some looked resigned. A few looked hopeful for the first time in centuries, across the galaxy. Billions watched the broadcast on refugee worlds. Displaced families wept with relief on human colonies. Crowds gathered in public squares to witness history on 100 different planets. Young species who had never had a voice suddenly realized they would finally be heard, but the work was just beginning. The Void Raider Coalition did not simply dissolve because of a political vote. The combined fleet, now including human warships fighting alongside Council forces, pushed the Raiders back system by system. The fighting was brutal and slow. Captain Diana Torres and the volunteer fleet served at the front of every battle. The Free Fleet, the mixed species unit that had formed in the refugee camps, fought beside them. They were no longer outcasts or rebels. They were the first generation of a new kind of military, one that did not fight for a single species but for everyone. The Raiders retreated to their strongholds. In the fringe, the galaxy's liberation came not through a single decisive battle but through 1,000 small victories. Slave markets shut down, pirate bases burned, trade routes reopened. It took 6 months to secure the core worlds. It took another 6 months to pacify the fringe. By the time the last major raider clan surrendered, the galaxy was transformed. The trials of the old council leadership began on the anniversary of humanity's departure. Former High Counselor Vexar faced charges including conspiracy, corruption, and crimes against sentient species. The evidence was overwhelming. The trials were broadcast across the galaxy. For the first time, ordinary citizens saw the corruption that had ruled them for millennia. They saw the secret deals, the bribes, the calculated oppression of young species. They saw the truth. Vexarn was not executed. Humanity had insisted that the new order begin without bloodshed. Instead, he and his fellow criminals were sentenced to serve the species they had harmed. They spent the rest of their lives working in plague wards, refugee camps, and disaster zones. They saw the suffering they had caused up close and personal every day until they died. Some called it mercy, others called it the cruelest punishment possible. The first session of the reformed Galactic Concord was held exactly 1 year after humanity had walked out of the original council chamber. The room looked very different. Now, the elevated platforms were gone. Representatives sat in a circle, all at the same level. There were no reserved seats for great powers. The Valanthi sat next to the Telly. The Korath sat next to the Wren. Humans sat scattered throughout the chamber, just another species among many. New Counselor Vithal opened the session. He looked younger than he had a year ago, despite his age. Hope did that to people. We gather today, not as rulers and subjects, he said, but as partners in a shared future. The old order is dead. Let us build something better in its place. The first item on the agenda was the formal recognition of 37 species who had been denied membership under the old system. Each representative came forward to sign the charter. Each received the same welcome, the same respect. Elelina Vasquez watched from her seat as the ceremony unfolded. Beside her sat James, the doctor who had returned to the Corvani plague ward against orders. On her other side was Diana Torres, who had been promoted to admiral of the new combined fleet. Behind her sat young Kyrex, the Valanthi refugee who had grown up to become the first non-human to graduate from Earth's diplomatic academy. They were all here because someone had decided to do the right thing, even when it was hard, even when no one was watching, even when the people they helped did not deserve it. That was the lesson humanity had taught the galaxy. That was the gift they had given. After the ceremony, a young Salari diplomat approached Alina. His scales were bright green, marking him as barely an adult. He had been assigned to the human delegation as an assistant, and he was clearly nervous about speaking to the famous ambassador. May I ask you something, ambassador? He said. Alina smiled. Of course. During the crisis, when the galaxy was falling apart, humanity could have taken over. You had the ships, you had the moral authority. Everyone would have accepted human rule. After what the council did, he paused. Why didn't you? Alina considered the question. She had been asked it many times before by journalists and historians and foreign dignitaries, but this young diplomat seemed genuinely curious, not just looking for a quote. Do you know what my daughter told me before I left for this mission? Alina asked. The Salari shook his head. She said, don't become them, Mom. Don't let them make you cruel. She was 12 years old when she said that. Alina looked around the chamber at the diverse gathering of species working together. For the first time in galactic history, we didn't conquer the galaxy because conquest was never the goal. We wanted justice. We wanted fairness. We wanted to be treated as equals. If we had turned around and conquered everyone else, we would have become exactly what we fought against. We would have betrayed everything we believed in. She turned back to the young diplomat. There's a saying among humans, an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. Revenge is easy. It feels good in the moment, but it doesn't build anything. It doesn't create a better future. It just creates more pain, more anger, more reasons for the cycle to continue. Salari looked thoughtful, but weren't you angry after everything the council did? Of course we were angry. We were furious, but anger is just an emotion. What you do with that emotion is what matters. Alina smiled. We chose to build instead of destroy. We chose to help instead of hurt. We chose to prove that we were worthy of respect by being respectable, not by forcing others to bow. That evening there was a celebration. Delegates from a 100 species gathered in the great plaza. Outside the concorded chamber, there was music and food and laughter, the sounds of a galaxy learning to live together. Alina stood at the edge of the crowd, watching. Admiral Torres found her there, not joining the party. Torres asked, just taking a moment. Alina replied, it's been a long year. Torres nodded. The longest of my life, but worth it, I think. Do you believe it will last? Alina asked. This new order we've built. Torres was quiet for a moment. Honestly, I don't know. The old hatreds don't disappear overnight. There will be challenges, setbacks, maybe even wars. Change is never permanent. That's not very optimistic. Torres laughed. I'm a soldier. Optimism isn't in my job description. She looked at Alina. But you know what gives me hope? All those young people in the Free Fleet, humans, and Volante and Corvani fighting side by side, trusting each other with their lives. That never happened before. And once you've trusted someone like that, it's hard to go back to hating them. Alina nodded slowly. The next generation, they won't remember the old hatreds. They'll only know the galaxy we built for them. Exactly. We might not live to see the full results of what we started, but they will, and that's enough. On the far side of the plaza, young Kyrax was dancing with a group of human cadets. He had grown tall in the past year, almost reaching adult height. The fear and confusion he had carried as a refugee was gone. In its place was confidence, purpose, and hope. An older Valente counselor watched him with disapproval, dancing with humans, laughing with species his people had once ruled over. It was undignified, but a human woman nearby caught the counselor's eye and smiled. Beautiful, isn't it? She said. The future. Counselor had no answer. He had spent his whole life believing in the old order, the natural hierarchy of species, the rightness of supremacy. Now a refugee boy danced with aliens and called them friends. Maybe the counselor thought maybe the humans were right. Maybe this was better. He did not join the dancing. He was too old for that. But for the first time in his life, he did not try to stop it. The celebration lasted until dawn. When the last delegates finally went to bed, the plaza was quiet except for the sound of cleaning drones and the distant hum of ships in orbit. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the window of her quarters watching the stars. Her communicator chirped with a message from Earth. It was her daughter, now 13, sending a picture of herself in her new school uniform. The message said, "Mom, I'm so proud of you. You didn't become them, you made them become us." Elena smiled. She saved the message to her personal archive right next to the list of names, the humans who had died, serving a galaxy that refused to acknowledge them. Sarah Chen, Marcus, Kim, thousands of others. They had not lived to see this day, but their sacrifice had made it possible. We did it, Elena whispered to the stars. We walked away, and when they asked us back, we demanded they become better. And they did. Outside, the first light of morning touched the towers of the Concorded station. A new day was beginning. A new galaxy was being born. And humanity, the young species that had been told they would never amount to anything, stood at the center of it all. Not as rulers, not as conquerors, as equals, as partners, as friends. That was the true victory. That was what made all the struggle worthwhile. The galaxy had once laughed when humanity walked away. No one was laughing now. They were too busy learning how to hope.